Welcome to the Solution Heroes, a Q&A series that features top solution leaders. Our mission here is to share examples of what good looks like so you can find inspiration outside your organization for the next stage of your career. We're focused on solution heroes that are moving the profession forward, setting the bar to new heights, sharing their everyday experiences as well. That way they help us all grow together. It's my pleasure to introduce our first guest, somebody you may know by now, Ron Whitson. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for asking me. It's a huge honor.
Yeah, love to talk to you, Ron. For those of you who don't know him, Ron's a seasoned pre-sales leader. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's got 3 decades of experience in technical sales. As an author of The Friendly Human in Pre-Sales, which I recommend you read, he champions the power of authenticity, storytelling, relationship building, and technical sales. He's led global pre-sales teams, built scalable enablement programs, developed innovative demo strategies that drive revenue. He's a frequent podcast guest, an industry speaker, an advisory board member, the PreSales Collective, like myself, and he's dedicated to elevating the professional. So the first question for you, Ron, is a bit of a hot take. What is one misconception of the pre-sales profession you've spent so much time focused on that you want to clear up immediately?
Oh no, that's a that's a good one. I think a misconception about our profession is that it's about doing demos. I think people believe, and sadly, maybe there are still some people who believe this to today, that the SE, the sales engineer, the pre-sales person, their job is to go and deliver the demo. I thought that was my job when I first started this. And over time, I've learned it's so much more than that. We're problem solvers, we're communicators, and I focus on those two things because people don't buy based on the tech. People still, to this day, I mean, what are we, February 2025? People are still buying from people. It's not just AI
Right.
agents doing everything quite yet. So the ability to build those relationships, to bring value to someone, to be authentic, those are really important because that's what's going to put you in that position to win the business. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and it's much more than just like a somebody who's there as a technical tool to do the demo. You're attaching to that business and that revenue and that outcome, right?
It's super important. I mean, you know, I think we all know SEs who are tools and sellers who are tools, and probably not the best way. But
Sure,
you know,
sure.
when it's that partnership, right? When you've got someone working the opportunity, and you've got the technical person there alongside them as a partner. Man, I've been part of some really cool teams who have solved a lot of problems and made a lot of money for our companies. But it was all based on those relationships. So to me, that's always something that's super important about what we do.
Yeah, I love that. I want to kind of get into story time real quick. And you've been in leadership for a long time. Um, and I want to know, like, what are some of the most, or let's talk about one interesting leadership challenge. What's the most interesting thing within an organization from a leadership angle? And then the second part,
Yeah.
let's talk about the problem itself. And then the second part is how you've gone about solving that problem.
Yeah, I think a problem that a lot of leaders run into in pre-sales, and this has been true, before just the latest kind of market conditions that we've been facing. The best pre-sales people who I've worked with over time, they all share this common trait of being curious and wanting to grow and to learn. And that's not always this straight linear path into a management role, into leadership and stuff like that. And sadly, a lot of times there aren't a lot of promotion paths that are just put in front of someone as, hey, here's how you do that. So I think that's the problem. I think not having a clear progression for people in our profession can be really off-putting. And a lot of times it's like, well, if I can't be a manager here, then maybe I have to go somewhere else, jump to another company to get that promotion, get that next step. I think leaders can do a lot to combat that by investing the time with the people on their team, understanding what their goals and their aspirations are, and finding unique and innovative ways to provide them those opportunities. A lot of times people ask me, well, what does that look like? It can be as simple as giving them opportunities to lead other projects, giving them opportunities to provide some coaching or some mentorship to someone either on the team or maybe someone outside the team. It's the opportunity to go and be the lead on a strategic relationship with another department at your company, be it product or engineering or marketing. You give them little tastes of something like that. It gives them a chance to kind of flex those muscles to see if they like it. But as a leader, it gives you an opportunity to see how they perform in those situations and maybe gather some information on how you could coach them forward. And then just another thing, I mean, again, we are both involved in the pre-sales collective pretty heavily for a lot of reasons, but I think that's a wonderful opportunity to find those external relationships, um, find other people you can talk to do some problem solving. We're all doing the same stuff, just different flavors of it. But I think that's a great way to do it, to go and expand that network and get those additional connections.
You love that. I agree with you 100%. Adding nothing, I think that's very, very smart. Um, we're focused this month, whenever you think of a focus for content or thought leadership, this month I wanted to focus on how to scale solutions influence on revenue.
Mm,
Here's the thing, Ron, we know we already impact revenue more than almost anybody understands, right?
yes.
We know we're the trusted advisor in the room. We're the ones who get those deals done, right? But it's very hard to influence your organization and sort of change culture and perception on being a revenue organization. So I want you to talk about your team's journey to expanding its influence on revenue, and that could be in perception on revenue or like or influence on revenue on purpose and sales.
I think again, a lot of stuff comes down to relationships, but I think I'll give you three things. The first thing is you've got to build relationships outside of just the relationship with your AE and your sales leaders. You've got to have those relationships across the company. Um, when you have those relationships, that gives you the opportunity to be in conversations that you may not have been part of before. And then when you're in those conversations, it's really important. I mean, it's a huge balance between humility and being smart and all the other things that we have in our toolbox. But you've got to balance this. I'm in this conversation, I hear something, and now I know where I can deliver some value. I can bring some value to the conversation. I've got some thoughts that maybe could help the company. So you've got to put yourself in that position. You've got to then speak up about what you think you can bring. And that's why it kind of gets back to authenticity and having a POV and knowing, what you can do and what you stand for. But then the third thing, I think this is where a lot of pre-sales leaders fall a bit short is, again, I think about our engineer brain and we're like, well, A plugs into B and this is a perfect logical argument. There you go. And we stop there. And when we're talking to sales, I think it's really, really important. When we're talking to sales in other parts of the business, is to think like a business leader. And it's just a different version of what's in it for me. If I go to the sales leader and I suggest something, I don't suggest it because it's this beautiful solution came from my brilliant mind. I need to say, here's the problem we're addressing. Here's the solution I think is going to work. And here's how it's going to benefit everyone. Tell them what's in it for them. Describe that benefit, explain it. Don't just go in there and say, this is the perfect software you should buy, end of discussion. No, you've got to make the business argument for it. I think that's a piece that we miss a lot. I know it was a piece I missed early on. I had to learn how to make that business case. And once I was able to do that, I was able to make some really cool things happen.
Oh, I'm right there with you, Ron. I used to think, hey, it just makes sense. They'll get it. And
Yeah,
that's not enough. You have to make sure that the value on the other side of that is clear for a much bigger
100%.
organization than your own. This has a lot to do with the way you approach things. But there's also sort of a cultural element within pre-sales teams on how to expand influence, or even if, like let's say people go, hey, that's not what I want to do. Maybe they think of their job as the demo person, right? And so I think from like a tactical standpoint, it's pretty easy to put like arrows and of influence around the board, but changing culture is a lot deeper than that. So,
Mm,
what's your opinion on how to change culture so that pre-sales can expand influence within an org?
yeah. Well, actually, you did a little session on this at DemoFest East last year that I really liked, and you had this concept of branding your year
Yeah.
and picking this goal that you want to pursue and doing some very intentional activities towards that. So I think that's a really useful way to go about that to kind of rah-rah the team and say, hey, here's the direction we're going. But again, just like everything else, we've got to supply the why. Um, I think pre-sales people will do just about anything you ask them to do, and that's whether you're a seller or not. We'll do just about anything you ask us to do. We just don't want to feel like our time is being wasted. So if you give
Right.
me a good reason for asking, me to do something, then you're going to get me on board. And just to give a really, really poor example here, there's a hot topic around activity tracking. And I will die on the hill that the most important metrics around what we do as pre-sales professionals are more qualitative in nature than quantitative in nature. If I did 200 demos this month, that tells you nothing. What's really important is how quickly could I get the technical win? How quickly was I able to achieve that trusted advisor status? How easily can I create and manage relationships with the sales team and everybody else I support? Those are the important
Yeah.
ones. But anyway, think about activity tracking. If you just come and say, okay, Ron, I want you to track all these demos you're doing, great, more busy work, right? But if you come to me and say, hey, we really want to understand the capacity the team is currently under to know if we need to grow some additional roles and everything, okay, now you're telling me why I have to do this stuff. So I think that's just a normal human nature thing is if you're going to ask me for something, give me the why piece of it. Help me kind of understand that a bit more. So as leaders, when we want to attack something, when we want to try to drive some influence or have some new thing that we're doing, spend a little bit of time, think about a way to brand it to make it exciting, and then really spend some time thinking about what is the benefit your team is going to receive? What's the why for doing it?
One thing I like to say is that smart people hate dumb tasks, right?
That's
Time
good.
tracking. Have you ever rolled out like, hey, we need to track activity. So everybody log all the minutes they spend doing things in your CRM, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll last about 6 weeks, and all the SEs will go, this is not. It's because we know it's not worth our time. It's like it's in our nature to just hate it,
Exactly.
and we don't want to
Exactly.
do it, right?
And then garbage in, garbage out, right? So, well,
Yeah,
I didn't do anything today, so I put 3 hours working on this demo environment. It's
yeah,
useless
yeah.
information. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, we do need the data, right?
Yes.
And to your point, though, it'd be cool if you could get hey, Ron did 200 demos this month. This is how curious he was, or this is how much the prospect talked, and this is how much Ron didn't talk.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like that level deeper that gives you that level of like quality would be really cool.
Or I did 200 demos this month, but the demo data in each of them was significantly different because it was different industries and different use cases. I actually spent the time configuring those environments.
Wow. Yeah, that's super powerful. Then you could talk about business cases for like tooling and other things on how to cut that down.
Yes.
Um, wow. If someone wants to start getting their team to evolve like we're talking about today, um, it's hard to go from 0 to 1 whenever you think
Oh,
about
yeah.
changing culture. It's such a big term, right? It's kind of scary. And sometimes you see examples outside in the wild and they look amazing. It's like, I can't build what that big enterprise team has built overnight. What's the first step? What's the simple thing you can do to start today?
What's the thing about, 1% improvement every day? You've got to start somewhere.
Right.
I'll give you a couple of thoughts on this. One thought is, what's the phrase? And I always mangle this one, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, something like that.
Oh, I love
Is that
that.
close?
Yeah, yeah, probably. I haven't heard it, but I get it.
Yeah. My last team had a superpower in that we would come up with a solution to an idea, and it wasn't, 100% figured out. It was maybe 75, 80% figured out, and we would implement it. We were able to move really quickly on putting things in place. And it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And what we were able to do is just iterate on that concept. And as we had something in place, that kind of informed us as what needed to be adjusted, what needed to be fixed. So I think that's one thing that people can do is get V1 out there and get it in place. And then that's going to help inform you of some of the other things that need to be addressed and fixed. And there's going to be bumps and there's going to be things that don't go right. That's fine. You started something. You didn't sit there for 6 months and do your analysis paralysis, right?
Right.
The second thing is, and this is more from the leadership standpoint, I think we really have to kind of understand the people on our team and how are they motivated and what do they want to do. If someone just wants to be the person who does the demos, gosh, I hope they want to be the person who does the really, really good, relevant, effective demos And if they don't, then that becomes a question for me. Is it a skill issue? Is it a will issue? And then how to go about addressing that. If I go down the dark road for just a minute, I think this is another area where pre-sales leaders can make a small change to go from good to really, really great. And I think we've all seen this on our teams before. You've got that one person who's kind of just phoning it in. They've learned the basic demo. They do the basic demo every time. They don't really put a lot of effort into it. They don't step up with other tasks. They don't contribute to the company or the team. Those are the people that we've got to fix, and we need to fix them very, very quickly. And people say, but the rest of the team is performing well. Yeah, but what have you felt like when you've been on a team that you feel like you're performing well and everybody knows this one person isn't pulling their weight?
Right.
That's something that you need to fix because I really worry that that can kind of poison the rest of the team where they feel like, well, gosh, this person isn't giving 100%. Why am I? So, and again, it gets into that skills thing or the wills thing. And if it's a skills thing, fine, get in there, do your investigation, learn, and see if there are things you can do to coach and mentor and get that person where they need to be. If it's a wills thing, then you need to take action on that sooner rather than later.
Right. Yeah, well said. And I think, it's also opportunity cost.
Yes.
And you could see this as an IC or a leader or anybody, and you can say, what would happen if that individual was extra motivated? What's the difference in the culture of the team? How would it feel
Exactly.
to work here? Like deeper than the numbers. How would it feel when you log in every day and you get on that team meeting? It may feel better, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you see the team meeting on the calendar, it's like, oh crap, team meeting. Or it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
all right, here we go.
Should be pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to your first point on the good, not great, which I wholeheartedly believe in, and I try to do that because I used to be in the first camp where I wanted to be perfect. My work would have to be perfect. All my spacing would be great on the PowerPoint,
Yep.
everything. That's not the way to do it. But what I find whenever you're rolling out big change in an organization, it's also kind of difficult to roll something out that's 70% baked. And there's some unique teams that I think will take that and run with it, and other teams that are a little bit more sensitive to it. Right. I found that working with sales teams and aligning and working with let's say we're changing culture, and we want to change our targets to be aligned with revenue goals. It may be a little harder with sales. You might want to be a little bit more baked than 70%.
Yeah.
Um, but I think 70% has to work. That's just like that's how change is made. So, what are some of your key lessons learned when you were working with sales and you're aligning on revenue goals? How do you help us understand or give us an example of ways that we can kind of align ourselves and make that shift with the sales team?
Well, so one of the things I did in my career, and a bunch of people know this story, but I was working at IBM. I was leading a pre-sales team, and an opportunity came along to actually step down and take on the role of an account executive and be a seller. And I did that. I say it was a great opportunity because the person who I was then reporting to as a seller had been a peer, and my second line was previously my manager. So it was an opportunity to try something in an environment where the people above me knew what I was capable of delivering from the pre-sale standpoint. Now, why did I go to the dark side for a little bit? Throughout my career, I typically saw pre-sales leaders came in two buckets. Okay. One was the older person who'd been around for a while and everyone kind of smiled and nodded at them like the strange uncle that you only see at Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? You
Yeah.
like him okay. You don't really know him all that well, but okay, fine, whatever, Chris. The others were pre-sales leaders who could actually make things happen and get things done. And as I kind of looked a little bit further, the ones who had the juice actually had some sales experience. So I wanted to find a way to add that to my CV. So this opportunity at IBM was a perfect opportunity to do so. So I went and did it. And I did it for 3 years. I didn't want to jump in there for like a quarter and make it some kind of weird experiment. I jumped in full hearted for 3 years. I laugh because when I say full hearted, SKOs were very different. Customer meetings were very, very different when you're a salesperson versus pre-sale. So I got stories in person for that. But anyway, I did for 3 years, made some money, closed some deals, did all the things, negotiating, licenses, all that kind of stuff. Um, found out I'm not coin operated. I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
I don't wake up every morning, hey, what am I selling today? I wake up every morning, hey, what problems am I solving today? That's what I'm excited about. But I'm really glad I did because it helped me have so much empathy for our sellers. They're not stupid people. They're very smart people. They're very capable and skilled people. They just have a very different job than us. And in Chris White's book, he talks about the partner principle, the partner habit, and how they're motivated differently from how we're motivated. Why do we want that PowerPoint, everything to be perfect as a pre-sales person? Because we're driven by reputation. And that's why we want the images to be exactly aligned and not one, skewed a bit from the other. But sellers are more motivated by getting the deals done and moving quickly. So that's where some of that friction comes from. But having done their job, I feel that empathy. Now, if a seller comes to me and says, hey, I know we should do discovery and all this kind of stuff, but I really just need to get this demo done tomorrow, I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to let them make the business argument as to why we should do this, but it can't be the exception every time. There's got to be those systems and processes in place. If you got a valid reason for kind of, missing the process a little bit, I'll listen to you. But again, not everything can be an exception. I think if as pre-sales people, and I'm not saying everybody needs to go get a job. Everyone doesn't need to go to the dark side. Okay, don't do that. But as pre-sales people, if we could just do that thought exercise of being a seller and listening to some of the things we tell we tell them when we don't want to do what they're asking us to do, I think that could really help us understand their position a bit better and maybe make some progress in those relationships. They're not asking you to do this demo with no notice so you are in a position to fail. For some reason, they think this is the step that's going to get them the next, phase in the deal. I think we need to go back and say, hey, usually we do this. Why do you not want to do that this time? And just be able to be in a position to have that conversation with them.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. And that leads to curiosity. Like if they're motivated by and I would say like judged by revenue, and the goal is to get the revenue in the door, and they want to skip a step, that ultimately will get that deal in the door in a more efficient way or a more concise way, then why skip the step? Does it affect the ability to get the
Yeah.
revenue? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, we've got lots of different names for what we do, but we've kind of settled at least on pre-sales for the pre-sales collective, a bunch of other organizations. Sales is in there. If we don't get sales, it doesn't matter if it's pre, post, or whatever, there's not going to be any sales. So we have to approach it from that standpoint of, yes, we've got to get this deal moving forward. And again, our approach to it is just based on some very different thinking from the seller approach. That's why it's got to be that partner.
Shifting to the demo a little bit, because we all do demos. Um, I'm interested in, look, you've worked at some huge organizations. So what's one of the craziest demo stories or most ambitious demos you've ever created?
Mm.
And then what's one of your biggest demo fails?
Oh
And how
gosh,
did you push
don't make
through
me talk
that?
about the failure.
I like to talk about the,
Um, all right, let's talk about the most ambitious one first. Let's start with the positive here. Um, and this is a story from when I was an individual contributor. I can still say that, and this story is actually it's in the book too. It's in the chapter on storytelling. But anyway, there was this opportunity with a natural gas plant on
Mhm.
the western coast of Australia in a city called Karratha. And this demo that we ended up having to go do was an RFP response demo. So they had given us like 200 individual requirements. We need to see this, we need to see this. And they made it really clear that during the demo, they're basically scoring each requirement. One of the toughest kind of demos I think, we can be charged with. And it's kind of a funny story because the way I got notified of this demo was I'm sitting here working away and I see an email and I'm copied on this email. And my manager at the time is saying, yeah, Ron can probably be in Australia next week. And like, what? Probably should come to me and check on that. That's a long way from Dallas Fort Worth. Anyway, as I was prepping the demo, my idea for handling this one was I was going to have a slide deck, and each of their requirements was going to be a slide. And my plan was, because again, I knew they were going to be checking everything off. My plan was to show the requirement on a slide, jump into the product, demonstrate that particular feature they wanted to see, and then go to the next slide and et cetera, et cetera. And it was, I think, 6 hours for the meeting. It's a long meeting. Um, as I was going through that, it's like, man, this is really disjointed. It doesn't tell a coherent story. It's just, categories of stuff. And I thought, if I move this stuff around and change the order, I can tell a much better story. And so I got with my sales guy. It's like, look, this is what they've given us, but if we change this around, I said, it just flows so much better. And he agreed. I said, what do we do? He said, we asked them. So I was like, okay, great. And so I prepped two different decks, one in their order, one in my order that made more sense. And at the day of the meeting, after we get done with all the preliminaries and the intros, and it's time for me to walk through the product, I told them, I said, listen, I will show you every requirement and I've got it in your order and we'll go through step by step and make sure you have plenty of time to score everything. But I think this other order will tell a better story about the problem you're looking to solve. And if you don't mind, I'd really like to go in this other order. I'll tell you every number. I'll let you know where we're at so you guys can score along, but I think this will work better. And thankfully, they said, yeah, we'd be interested in letting you do that. And so we did. The demo went really, really well. We got a lot of positive feedback. But what was most amazing was at the end of it, they told us nobody else did that. And that proved to us how well you understood our requirements. And we ended up winning the deal, which is like $3.6 million. So that was really
Wow.
cool.
Wow, that is awesome. So I love how you articulated it in the meeting as well. You didn't just surprise them with it. You said, here is
No,
what I have. Here is what I'm going to do. Because in a way, you're telling them, here's what you should expect from me, right?
yes,
And people
expectations.
love that level of instruction. Now let's,
And again, it was all right on page 3, requirement number 2, 14.
yeah,
So,
let's shift
but they were able to
to
score.
the biggest failure.
Oh, see, I was trying to avoid that. Okay, so the biggest fail, this is a great story too. So, again, back in the day when we would travel places, and this is why I no longer work on an airplane, but I'm on the airplane. And again, I think a lot of us like to tweak our environments, try and make everything just perfect as much as we can. And so I'm on the airplane doing this. And as I'm working along, just all of a sudden, I get this weird message. And this is back in the time. This is really, again, I've been doing this for a while. This is a laptop that's running a virtual environment, a VM, and in the VM is Internet Information Server, SQL Server, and some other stuff, right? So these are all running inside a VM on this machine.
Yeah.
If I remember right, the VM was loaded up on a DVD, so you'd have to put that in. Anyway, there's a lot. I'm working away on the plane, making some adjustments to the application, tightening some things up, going through my notes, just prepping because that's what I do. And I get this weird message from SQL Server. It's like, oh, I don't know what that means. So it's like, it's getting close to landing time. Let's go ahead and just shut down and we're good. We're good. So I shut it down. And I get to the airport. I'm waiting on my other colleagues to get there. And we did come in the night before. This is like coming in that morning and then doing the meeting. I don't know why we did that, but anyway. And so I thought that message is kind of weird. I wonder what that means. And so I pull the laptop up, start powering everything up, and the application will not load.
No.
And I do a little bit of digging. And the message from SQL Server basically was telling me that my database had corrupted.
Oh my
So
God.
the actual file supporting all these tables and everything was driven from the database. It's all gone. It's all gone. Weeks and weeks of work. Now you would say, well, don't you have a backup? No, there was no backup because it was all just files on the hard drive. And so it was essentially the backup file that corrupted. And so I'm just freaking out. You'd start turning red and you're feeling hot. It's like, what are you going to do? It's just all this work that was lost. And I've got this meeting coming up in a couple hours. I'm waiting on my colleagues. And one of my colleagues is this very German gentleman named Werner Knoblich. I love Werner. He's on LinkedIn. He's a great dude. But now the stupid Texan has to explain to the very smart German, what happened. I'm like, well, Verna, the database blew. I don't understand, Rob. What do you mean it just blew up? And it's just not going well. It's like, look, I don't know what happened either, but I've got nothing for the demo, and we've got to get to the demo now. So we went, and I'm still in the back of the car trying to figure out what I can put together. And it's like, look, okay, I think I got enough. We can get started by just rebuilding some basic stuff. And I had a couple of screenshots. So we get to the meeting, and we do the intro, and it was one of these. again, long demos back in the days for some reason. I think it was another 4 hour or something like that, where we had a couple hours in the morning, had a lunch break, and then a couple hours to wrap up. So during lunch, everybody left. Werner comes over and gets me a Snickers bar. And so I'm staying there during lunch and I'm, typing away as fast as I could to get some other stuff built. But I had enough stuff before the meeting. We had enough stuff after the meeting to show them to continue the conversation. But yeah, I'm sweating now just remembering just remembering that story. But it's funny. It's like, what could I have done? And I spent a lot of time beating myself up about that, trying to figure that out. And at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything I could have done. I think something is, it was just a problem. It's something happened. And I think that was the lesson I finally figured out from that, right? You cannot prepare for every contingency. Something is going to happen. Something's going to break. Something's not going to work the way you expect it to. And at that point, it's no longer about, blame. It's no longer about, what you could have done. It's how do you respond in the situation? How do you react to it? Right.
Right.
How do you deliver what you need to deliver and then, live to fight another day? Again, what I took from that was I don't work on the airplane anymore. Not that I'm going anywhere on the airplane anymore, but at some point that demo is going to be locked in. I'm not going to be messing around with it until, 15 minutes before the demo. I'm going to get things locked. I'm going to get into a stable place, and then we're going to go from there.
No, it's a good story. I was right there with you. And I remember demos used to be that way. You would get on a plane, you'd go out, and like you said, it would be like this 4 hour ordeal. Somebody would
Yeah.
put the big the thick piece of paper, the big binder full of documents in front of every single person at the table, and you
Yeah.
do the whole process. Um, but to your point, the demo stability has always been a challenge. We work in tech. Thankfully we have tools out there that are solving these kinds of things and make it no longer part of like the worst part of the job was
Yeah.
like getting into environments that you just can't trust, right? Um, and man, but after all the different experiences, thank you for sharing them with us. I want to part with essentially one piece of advice you'd like to share with the group, and then let's cover how to get a hold of you and find your book.
Sure. Sure. I think, and I've said this, people may have heard me say this before, but if we were attorneys or doctors, I'm glad we're not. I was going to be an attorney at one point, but I'm glad I'm not. If we were those professions, then every year there's continuing education credits that we have to go and get to maintain our certification. And it's always troubled me a bit. I've always wondered, why do we not do that as sales professionals? And we are sales professionals. We are technical sales professionals. But why do we not do that? And I'm sorry, a bunch of us recently had SKO. That doesn't count. I mean, that's so focused and so within that period of time. I challenge everyone who is a professional pre-sales person, do your own continuing education stuff. What are you doing to further your career? Yeah, you're good at presenting, but what have you done lately to be better at presenting? Have you thought about different people's learning styles? Have you thought about how to incorporate different visuals in your presentation? Have you listened to yourself lately to see if there are filler words or something you could remove? There's always ways to improve. I think it's really important that we actively look for those things and try to work on that.
I love that, the continuous learning aspect. Most of us in this profession are curious by nature, right?
Yes.
And so maybe just turn that curiosity inward a little bit.
Absolutely. And as far as people wanting to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people. So find me there. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about the book, I've got a landing page for it, timelessbehaviors.com. It'll link you to Amazon. We've got the Kindle version, the hardback, the paperback is available. We recently launched the audiobook version, and I'm very happy that my friend Jack Cochran did a wonderful job narrating it for us. I tried narrating. You think that would be easy? That was so hard, but Jack did a wonderful job. So I'm really pleased with that. And then there's also, I mean, if anybody wants a signed copy, then I've got the ability to send them a signed copy from the website also. But it's also on Amazon, so you can find it a couple different places.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us on Solutions Heroes. I really appreciate it. Please let us know how we did. Give us feedback. Connect with us on LinkedIn and anywhere else. And Ron, thank you so much for being our first guest. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you. I'm
Always
excited.
fun, my friend. Thank you, Chris.
I love following what you do. So keep doing it.
I will.
Thank you. Take care.